Hello and welcome to the Walk Off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. This is a Monday morning mailbag on a Tuesday afternoon, done on a Wednesday. Quick apologies to all of you for missing Friday's show. Adam and I were on the road and just literally couldn't figure out a spot to do it. We were in Moose Jaw at the time. Did Saskatoon on Saturday night. Great shows. Just a quick shout out to some grounds crew members who came out. Really appreciate whenever the walk-off listeners can join us for a comedy show. So a tip of the hat to Tyler and Moose Jaw. A big shout out to John and to Al in Saskatoon. And of course, we would love to have more of you come out and join us on some shows. Adam and I are on the road again this weekend. We're doing the Good Times Comedy Club in Lethbridge, Alberta. That's Friday and Saturday night. That is going to be a ton of fun. Whenever we get to perform in a comedy club, that's about as good as it gets when people are actually paying to see comedy. That's fun times. And then we're doing a brewery in Edmonton, Sick Brewing, SYC in West Edmonton. There's only about 50 tickets before that show fills up. And I'm not sure what we're at. We're probably more than halfway at that point. So if you're in Edmonton and you want to come check out the show, definitely do so. I will throw the link up in the comments. On that, while we're speaking grounds crew members, just found out a couple days ago, Adam, that longtime walk-off listener and grounds crew member, Lauren Stewart, you might remember him. He came to our first Calgary live podcast a couple
Ah,
years back.
sure.
Yeah. But yeah, his wife and him just had a second baby. So yeah,
Okay.
big congrats.
So is this one Scott Adam or is this Adam Scott?
Yeah. What is
What's the
the
first
naming
name?
order exactly? We know it's both of our names out of respect, but the order would love to know. Yeah.
Gotta be Scott first, because last initial S, you can't have ASS.
Yeah, not unless you're the Oakland Athletics, right? So
Well,
new
congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah, congrats, Lauren. Couple new Patreon members too joined in the last few days. So a big thank you to Al, who we met in Saskatoon. Really fun show there at Stumbletown Distillery. And then Alex is also new to Patreon. Patreon, of course, gets you that automatic bump into the mailbag. So if you are constantly trying to get your comments or questions heard and you are missing out, well, this will solve all your problems for $4 a month automatically into the mailbag. You also get instant access to all of our interviews and, of course, bonus content MLB Mondays. I've had a few people reach out and be like, how do I join Patreon? Well, it's literally the Walk Off Podcast slash Patreon, right?
That's not how websites work, but
No,
patreon.com/the walk off
there it
podcast.
is. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Um, yeah, and then it's just like signing up for Netflix or anything else. Enter your email and your credit card, and you're good to go.
There you go. Let's dive into it here. So we always comb through your interaction throughout the week. We did miss Fridays, so our YouTube section is basically just from last mailbag. So we touch on some of the stuff that we were talking about then. And you can always reach out on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. We're on Blue Sky now, the Walk Off Podcast, Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast, and even get into some Discord stuff here, which is another perk of Patreon. So we're starting with Al McGee. He commented on MLB Mondays. He says, great show at Stumbletown this weekend. That's Al from Saskatoon, by the way. And then he goes, give Vladdy the money. We were talking Vladdy and the Hector Gomez comments on Twitter there, and that there's going to be another offer made. So he goes, give Vladdy the money. The next 7 years looks worse without him than the last 7 years of the contract will with him. Shatkins needs to go regardless. Hopefully, our prospect development takes a step and we get some pieces to support the window. And tough to argue with that. It really is going
Good
to
way.
be, it's going to be a measurement of how good is he in that first 7 years and how bad in the last.
I really like the way that was framed of the next seven. without him look worse than the last 7 with him. You're twisting my arm with
Yeah.
creative wording like that. So I still don't know if I agree with it, but I like the way it's presented.
And I mean, this is something we talked about on MLB Mondays was just the do's or don'ts of Vladdy. And the big thing that we brought up was that, yeah, the back end of that contract's going to be horrible, as all of these mega contracts are. Like, you can't convince me that the last 5 years of Trey Turner in Philadelphia is going to be anything other than just kind of painful to watch. But you know what? That's Phillies go to a World Series after picking them up, right? So like it's it's tough because you need these high-end generational guys to really put you over the edge, but they're also the guys that are so expensive that can really kind of sink you on the back end of their contracts. And how do you measure the risk? It's really organization to organization, and we'll see where the Blue Jays land on this. I really do think that there is a needle to be thread here for keeping Vladdy before he goes to free agency. And I think that that window is going to be before the season. If he gets to the season without signing a contract, I mean, as it is, I still am kind of on the side of it. I'd be shocked if he doesn't go to free agency, but who knows, right? The right deal could eliminate the risk on his end and make sure the Blue Jays aren't in a bidding war.
Here's one thing I wonder, like just from like a public talking sphere standpoint. Obviously, the Blue Jays fan base is being very vocal about where they stand on all of this, right?
Yes.
Seem like a majority are like not on Vladdy's side right now,
I
but
would say that the public opinion has shifted, and I don't, I say that with the caveat of nobody's on Ross Atkins' side, right? So it's like it went from being on Vladdy's side to now no one's on a side, right?
accurate.
So yeah.
But I wonder what I know it's going to be a quieter fan base conversation, but with other cities, like what's the discourse like in Boston and in New York right now,
Mhm.
right? Like, is there a podcast with 4,000 subscribers drooling at the idea of giving Vladdy 600 million? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is there teams out there that are saying, man, Jays won't give him 600 million? We'd give him that in a heartbeat,
So
right?
this leads into the next comment beautifully. This is from Metal Manic, and he goes, I'm no economist, but in 5 years' time, the asking AAV of Vladdy will either be going rate or notably less for mashing first baseman. His contract could look like a bargain. Tatis Jr.'s contract looks like a super deal compared to today's big offers. His contract was only in 2021. 14 years and 330 million. Unless the some sort of magnificent outcome impacting maximums on contracts comes to light, I suspect they, contracts, are going to continue to skyrocket in value. Would a walkout lockout result in a team being on the hook for that first year of Vladdy's future deal? Question mark. So it's all this is actually a really good point. And I mean, it's impossible for us to look into the future and see where the CBA is at. And obviously, 2026, there is going to be some, in my estimate anyway, some major amendments to the CBA. I don't know how that affects the 1% we've talked about before, the mega
Mm,
contracts
yeah.
out there. But outside of some major changes to the CBA. I think Metal Manic's onto something here. The thing is though, for every Tatis Jr., where you're like, you know what, that's actually not too bad. For every Rafael Devers, where you're like, kind of a bargain. There is that Albert Pujols deal. There is that Anthony Rendon deal, right? There are those mega contracts where it's just like the wheels fall off the guy and you're stuck with an albatross, right? And a movable contract.
Yeah, and I would say, oh man, I really want to be positive in
Yeah.
my for this, but if okay, so the Albert Pujols and the whatever, like there are the downsides, but if Fernando Tatis Jr. is our the the thing we're pointing to as a see things could go really well. Like for one, he's played a season and a half worth of baseball in 3 seasons since signing that contract. Like he missed a full season and then has missed another 80 games over the last 2 years.
Yes,
And he's only 25,
that's true.
right?
And
So,
some of those injuries were motorcycle related.
right. Or like pre existing shoulder that he didn't tell anybody about
Hmm.
and has changed from a shortstop to an outfielder. So I would pump the brakes on pointing to that and breaking into the newsroom with those sheets held up as a like, hey, I found the example of a success here. I don't think I'm ready to call that contract a good deal other than
Swap out the name for Fernando Tatis with Bryce Harper then.
right, you want me to pull up a new contract. I had a whole spiel ready for
Although I will say this, Bryce Harper also missed that full year because of Tommy John surgery there when he made the transition to first base. So maybe I'm just maybe I'm just putting my foot in my mouth here.
his contract. He signed 13-year, 330 million. Again, was for an outfielder who's now playing first base. Yeah. Um, I'm still with you on the like if Bryce Harper and Fernando Tatis Jr. are examples of like success stories in terms of big contracts, I think
Hmm.
that is all the red flag we need to know.
Hmm.
Fernando Tatis Jr. is also currently 26. He's Vlad's age.
Hmm.
So this contract with a AAV of $24 million, so 15 million less. And I think this is the point that Metal Manic is getting at, is just the way contracts go up. Is we're talking about something generally speaking, you're talking about an AAV of 25 million a year
Hmm.
forever, right? And
Hmm.
think, holy shit, that's a lot of money forever. And
It might
the,
not be
right,
in
so
10
that
years.
willing to like be in an agreeable mood with Metal Manic here is that like yes, if you take everything else aside and you're not worried about whether Vladdy is a DH in 5 years or not, if he's going to hit 600 career home runs or 400 career home runs, if you're not worried about any of that, you're just saying first baseman who can mash 40 million AAV in 2025, maybe 50 million AAV in 2030 for the same thing.
Right.
So I'll hear that. I still, again, I have a hard time just buying in as that we should just do it now. One thing with Fernando Tatis Jr. is they signed that in 2021, as Metalmatic points out. Tatis Jr. was 22 years old, so that did
Hmm.
include buying out four
Years of ARB.
a
Yeah.
pre-arb year and 3 arb years.
Hmm.
So that contract is only going to take him to age 35, whereas the point we're at, we're taking Vladdy to 40, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, the age 22, 23, 24, 25 seasons traded for 36, 37, 38 seasons, right? Like it
Hmm.
is 4 at the good end versus 4 at the stale end. And
I mean, the downfalls of a long-term contract with Vlad are obvious, right? There's all sorts of reasons not to. I'll go to the next comment here
okay,
because this still plays into this. Ian wrote in and says, I really don't get the Vlad Prince Fielder body comparisons. They aren't in the same universe. Prince was always a mess and never made the changes Vlad made. Remember, it was neck issues that ended his career. I'm sure weight had a lot to do with it, but not necessarily what it was. I would see Vladdy as more Big Poppy with a more supple rump. So,
it's totally possible on the
and I will say too, buddy, I will say, I know Johnny wrote in too and was like, it's completely irresponsible to compare Prince Fielder to Vladdy. I'm not saying their bodies are 100% the same at all. I'm more saying in a worst case scenario, Prince Fielder is the worst case scenario, right? Whereas, like, he is an incredible talent, a generational talent, a masher at first base whose health just doesn't hold together. And we don't need to get into the body or anything like that. It's just like a really sad story about Prince Fielder not being able to stay healthy and retiring far, far, far before a typical first baseman would, right? Like 31 years old to need to hang it up, especially when you look at the kind of player he was and the numbers he put up until his body couldn't hold up anymore, right? And obviously, every guy is different. Every body type's different. Health is different on every person. I mean, we've talked about Jose Barrios. I don't know what that man is doing, but he goes in there day in and day out, season in and season out, and he pitches 190 innings.
Yeah, like,
But for every Jose Barrios, there's a story, right? Of Ricky Tiedemann or a Nate Pearson, right? So, yeah, long-term contracts are risky, is all the point is here.
funny that Alec Manoa isn't even on the tip of our tongues anymore.
Yeah.
He's not even good enough to point to as a disaster. Um, so the idea that it's like irresponsible to compare Vlad to Prince Fielder is like, no, man. Like, I, it's irresponsible to realize that Prince Fielder exists as a data point and ignore it. You know, like we are also acknowledging that, like, yes, on the spectrum of outcomes, there's Prince Fielder and there's David Ortiz.
Yes.
And we, every time we mention Prince Fielder, we also say, look, he could also
Be
be.
David Ortiz. Yes.
So, but to just look at the data and be like, oh, okay, well, here's our clinical trials, and one person died of cancer, but let's just ignore it and go to market with it, and because one person grew a new six pack from what, like, okay, sure, you get cancer or a six pack from this pill. Do you want to take it? Like
I
maybe
mean, a
you,
six-pack would be pretty sweet.
right? Um, I don't know. It's just I get the love for Vlad and wanting to defend him, and like the
Mhm.
frustration in us. Maybe it sounds like we're just dismissing him as the Prince Fielder outcome is inevitable.
Which is
So
where I am not by any means. In fact,
no, like
I've been impressed with Vladdy's the way that he has got himself and his body in shape over the last few years, especially in comparison to where he was, right? Like
really,
he looks great this year.
I'm really excited to see how he does with this body.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess just where I'm at is knowing, man, the wide range of outcomes is just such a scary thing to give $500 million to,
Hmm.
right? It is
Now, I think it's safe to say, Adam, that if this did happen, we'd both still celebrate.
if
Like,
we sign for sure.
right? Like, if
For
we
sure.
found out tomorrow Vladdy is signing a 15-year, $550 million deal. Like, you might as well get on board because if nothing else, it's going to be a fun 5 years, right? And it definitely extends the window here. And again, what we were talking about on MLB Mondays that we makes us the most nervous is the lack of track record when it comes to developing talent within this organization. Because if you're going to have a mega contract, if you're going to have a guy who is 40 million AAV a year, you need four guys contributing at league minimum,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's
Otherwise,
just,
money for a pitching staff.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I guess here's where I'm at. It's not that I think Prince Fielder is a more likely outcome than David Ortiz. I think it's easy. Here's where I'm at. I think it's easier to fail, like to be a failure of an outlier, than it is to be a unicorn first ballot Hall of Famer as an
Yes.
outlier, right? So it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And I'm also just like more. worried about the bad, and this is just like how my own body or my own like mental glass half empty, I guess you could say, right? Is I'm more worried about the Prince Fielder outcome than I am excited about the possibilities of a David Ortiz outcome. Because even if the next 5 years go great and
Mhm.
he 200 home runs in the next 5 years, I'm I'm still gonna be like, oh man, I hope there's not a cliff waiting around the corner. You know what I mean? Like
I
it's
do.
never gonna feel safe at any point in his career until it's over, right?
It
Like he
actually,
at 36, and I'm still gonna be worried, like, oh, but is next year the year? Like when does Father Time catch up? So I just but that's on me, and I'll own that, and I'll apologize for that. And I'm sorry if I bring people down because I'm like, oh, it could go off the rail,
listen,
but
this
it's half a billion
reminds
dollars, man.
this reminds me a little bit of so I'm an old punk. All right. Like when I was in high school, I would live and die with punk music and Greg Graffin of Bad Religion. I mean, I loved Bad Religion and I just would play them nonstop. And I remember there's a quote from him where he was talking about how much shit they were getting for selling out, right? And he was basically like, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. Do you know how much easier it is to fail than it is to succeed? Like, it's not selling out. You become an artist because you'd like to get your art out there. And when you do manage to hit that,
Mm-hmm.
trajectory and you actually become a success, that's not easy. That's not like just oh, I decided I'd
I took
leave
the
my, yeah, my integrity to the side and become a success, right? And like, it's kind of on the same wavelength of what you're saying, right? It is just easier
fail.
to fail.
Yeah.
To be the failure anomaly is it sucks and it's never great, but it is easier to land there than it is on the David Ortiz
And
side of it.
man, I can't wait for all the positive comments that are pushing back on, like, we're just gonna be filled with like statistical, like, yeah, but if it's an anomaly, it's just as likely. And
Yeah.
I can't wait for all the math nerds to
The
explain.
50-50, it's
Yeah.
either it is or it isn't. It's 50-50.
Yeah. You either get cancer or you get a six pack. Either way, you're gonna be skinny in a few months. So
All of this to say, with where this team is at, this organization's at right now, I say sign Vladdy, honestly. And I know that does feel like I'm kind of kicking the problem down the road, but maybe I am. And if Vladdy's the guy, let's go for it, right? And again, they have really readjusted the way that they've done their scouting. They've
mhm.
they've got Shane Farrell out and a new scouting director in. They've reorganized their coaching staff hitting wise. David Popkins is at least getting results right now in spring training. This is a new hitting strategy that has been integrated throughout the organization. Development we're actually seeing Alan Roden pushing right now, which would be a huge boon. So maybe they're on the right track and maybe they've readjusted where player development isn't going to be the problem. We've seen it over the last decade, but I will say this, if we sign Vladdy and there isn't any player development, it could be a long, arduous road to haul after these first 5 years. So one last Patreon comment before we move on to Twitter. This is from Mish. She says so on MLB Mondays, we were talking about the fact Jose Barrios is the starter for opening day. And Mish goes, I don't care who's on the mound day one. I'm at all 7 games during the first week of the season, so I'll see them all. And then she, in quotes, goes, what a fucking bitch flex. Sorry, I'd hate me too. I'm just excited. So, yeah, no, and enjoy those games, Mish. And we know you're the super fan you are, and you're always the positive to whenever Adam brings his little rain cloud to the table. So,
Man, I am jealous though. That's gonna be a fun week for you, Mish.
yes, absolutely. Going to Twitter, Jenna DM'd us and said, hello, Scott and Adam. I know everyone says it's spring, but Davis Schneider has been amazing this spring training. There was a lot of talk he might not make the team this year and start in Buffalo. Do you guys think he should be on the roster? So let's start with this, Adam.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the battle to make the opening day roster. We know that there is a pile of the Buffalo boys vying for the final spot or two. I know that you can really get into the weeds on stats, everybody. I'm just taking OPS. I know you can dig so much deeper than this. Listen, yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna go with OPS. So in the spring, Alan Roden leads the way with a 1,336 OPS. Second on this list of all the Buffalo boys vying for a spot is Davis Schneider with 1,167 OPS. Miles Straw has an 1137 OPS. Addison Barger, a 1,067. Aralvis Martinez, a 907. Now, Aralvis just got a contusion on his hip. He's probably going to start in Buffalo now, so that eliminates one of them. Steward Berroa, whose skill set varies far differently than some of the guys that I've just mentioned outside of maybe Miles Straw. He has an OPS of 855. Steward Berroa, by the way, the fastest of every single guy that we've just talked about here, even though Miles Straw has some real wheels. Berroa definitely a head above of him. So I don't know if that plays into it or not. Nathan Lucas, I should say, 807, Law Perfido 660, and Will Wagner, the guy we kind of had, everyone just seemed to give him the lead in this going into spring, is at 648 and looks like he's destined to start in Buffalo and get his feet under him. So after reading all of that, knowing that Davis Schneider is 500 at bats, a little bit more than that into his career. And I know we always talk about, and we're not alone, we're just following the lead of other well thinking baseball minds, right? Who kind of put that 1,500 ABs as where you kind of know who a guy is. So
Yeah.
Davis is only a third the way there. I will also say that Davis Schneider has really struggled in high A. He really struggled in double A and really struggled in triple A before adjusting and then really getting his feet under him. I think Schneider should make this team. I think he should have the inside track because he's already been with the team. I
How
do think he
many
needed a really hot
are there
spring.
that we're
Sorry.
talking?
No, go ahead.
How many 26th man spots are these? Because you just listed what, seven, eight guys?
Yeah.
Are we talking about one? Is it the final
No,
spot?
no, there's probably three of those guys will make the team.
Okay. Okay.
And this also depends on where Dalton Varsho lands, right? Like, is he going to start with the team as a DH? Is he going to be healthy enough to play? Are they going to give him a week of rehab?
Right. Okay. So let's just say three, given that list you said.
Mhm. Alan Roden, fourth outfielder. Davis Schneider as your second baseman, third baseman, left fielder, right fielder. I mean, Schneider can play a little bit of everything. He's not a defensive stalwart or anything, but he's versatile with where you can put him.
Yeah. Um,
Miles Straw. I mean, they're paying him a bunch of money.
yeah, I mean, Miles Straw's probably in the lineup the same way Dalton Varsho was our cleanup hitter the year we got him.
Yeah.
Like there is a little bit of a, well, we didn't get him for no reason. I mean, the Miles Straw thing, I sure was more Sasaki related, right, with the international creative spending there.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say probably like Schneider, like you said, been there, done that. He's had his cup of coffee. His like it makes sense given the spring he's had to be like, yeah, welcome back.
Hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. And with any of these spots, right, it is kind of a low stakes thing to give out, right? Like we're not saying he's going to be our starting third baseman or whatever. He'll get reps, he'll get at bats, and yeah, probably like a fine choice. If his OPS was the 650, I wouldn't say, well, yeah, but he's the guy with experience. So honestly, but
No.
also be surprised if even if he had a 650 OPS in spring, they still went with him because of that big league experience. And they, liked what they saw in the cages and just figured, well, the results aren't there, but the process is good. So, given that the results have been there in spring, and he's been there and faced big league hitting and has shown the upside, I think,
And the hitting strategy of this organization has shifted a little bit this year, and it is far more in line with what Davis Schneider does, which is
damage.
damage. Exactly. Exactly. To take David Popkins' words. And I'm not one to sit here and be like, "Oh, the whole reason David Schneider didn't work out last year is Don Mattingly." However, there is obviously a major shift that has happened since last season when Don Mattingly was at the helm of the offense. He has been taken off of that. The 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 reins have been handed to a guy who is well known around the league for the way he keeps bats hot, for getting power out of guys who maybe have weird splits, and that's exactly how this team is going to operate, right? So Davis Schneider came out and said that last year he was trying to poke singles far more than he should have. And
Mm-hmm.
I do think that that has something to do with the strategy the Blue Jays had in place for all of their hitters. And I think that they've shifted away from that. And so if Davis Schneider strikes out more than last year, but also has 23 home runs, yes, please, right? Do damage. Not to really lean on that word, but
We're taking all of our batteries out of parallel and we're putting them in series. We're upping the voltage this year.
that's
So,
right.
but yeah, I'd say David Schneider's given everything he's gone over, like for sure, give
Yeah.
him one of those spots. I think.
And he fits in well in the clubhouse. Everyone loves him. The fan base loves him. And all of those guys that I just mentioned are all going to be given a shot at some point on this team this year. I guarantee it. And if they're hot in Buffalo and some other guy is struggling mightily, we're going to see a switch. I don't think that there's going to be the same sort of runway that maybe we've seen in the past here. This is a do or die season. And you
Yeah,
know what? If Joey Loperfido makes the team and is eating a big one, and we've got Jonathan Clase down in AAA killing it, or Steward Berroa killing it at the same position, we'll see them
I
swap one out.
it is going to be a departure from the Espinal Biggio days, where
Yes.
these are our 25th, 26th man, barring injury. These are the guys, and I
Yeah,
I do think you're right. It's like we got 30 options. We're going to take the best four at the bottom on any given day.
exactly. Moving along. This is from Trevor. Reached out on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. He goes, player development for this team is something I gotta see, not hear about. Nate Pearson, Ricky Tiedemann, Gunnar Hoagland, now Savage. I'm 100% in show me mode on these new arms, Roden and Martinez as well, and everyone else. The relative farm rankings people dismiss at their peril. Hopium springs eternal. The Blue Jays were recently ranked, I think it's 27th for their farm system, is what he's talking about here. There are always anomalies of success, but over a decade, the sample size is now material and its ass. I know some fans love the journey of these young players. I used to, LOL. Man, was I excited for Vlad and Bo and even Pearson to come up. But now, sorry, it's show me time.
Yeah, it's well, we said this. It's do or die. It's show me
Hmm.
time. Whatever cliches we want to use. It's we're at the end of this runway. Like it's time to take off or crash and burn. But we're at the end of
Exactly.
so it's
Grounds crew members, feel free to drop your comments there. Would love to know your thoughts on player development. I'm kind of in Trev's camp right now, where it's like, listen, we've heard all sorts of stuff over the last decade about all sorts of prospects. We've gotten really high on some of them. And yes, there's always that asterisk of injuries, right? I'm not shitting on Nate Pearson for the struggles he had or the fact that Ricky Tiedemann had to get Tommy John surgery, but this is part of baseball, and you can never count on prospects to definitely develop or definitely stay healthy. And so I kind of feel the same way. Show me. And you know what? In Alan Roden's defense, he's doing just that. Now he just needs to do it in regular season. Curious if he'll make the team out of camp. But if there is a guy who's going to surprise and make the team out of camp, I think Roden has the inside track with how well he's done this spring. Moving on.
Moving on.
This one is from Josh on Twitter. This isn't really Blue Jays related. This is just a fun little story he sent that I was like, I asked him, I'm like, do you mind if I share this on Mailbag? Because this is too good. So he goes, hey boys, so anecdotal minor baseball story you might find amusing. Our neighborhood borders two different leagues. Last year, Ben, so Josh's kid, played South for the Dodgers, which he loved. Except he played against rural farm boys that were raised on fertilizer and hard labor, so it was nothing but suffering. This year they switched our division, and now we're playing Western Winnipeg teams, which Ben was pumped for. Until he found out they're no longer playing for the Dodgers, but the Athletics, and he's just about ready to quit. I tried to be reasonable and explain it's the exact same team, all the same guys, but he's not having it. He goes, Dad, being traded from the Dodgers to the Athletics? No. Well, Ben, you're not alone, I'm sure. Anyone traded from the Oakland Athletics to the LA Dodgers, very excited and vice versa. I'm sure that's a tough one to take. So we feel your pain. Best of luck with your season. Fun little story there. Thanks for sharing, guys. Moving on, Abdullah reached out. He DM'd us on Twitter and says, hey, Scott and Adam, I thought I would try again for Mailbag. Well, there you go, buddy. You got in. He goes, I know Chris Bassitt is a guy a lot of fans are maybe writing off, but I think he's going to be better than last year in 2025. How do you both think he will do this year? Am I being crazy? I will start with I don't think he's being crazy. Chris Bassitt is a guy with quite a track record. And even though he is 36 on the final year of his contract here, he's not a dude who relies on velo. He's got 8 or 9 pitches. He's a wily guy. He's all about hitting his spots. He's about fooling hitters. So I can see a pathway to that. Chris Bassitt's ERA last year was, I think it was like 4.14, something like that. And it was
Point one.
it was
Yeah.
definitely a step back from 2023 when he made his debut with the Blue Jays.
So 10 years into Chris Bassett's career, he has a career ERA of 3.59. Um, first season with the Jays, 3.6 was
Mhm.
his, right? So yeah, a little bit of a
Right around career average. He also had a career high in innings pitched in his first season with the Blue
correct.
Jays, hitting 200.
He's had a great spring.
Yes, he has.
4 games, 15 innings pitched, 14 strikeouts, a whip of 1, and an ERA of 1.8. So he's ready to go.
He's ready to go. And listen, if Chris Bassitt can give us 170 to 190 innings and he's around that 4 ERA, I really do think that that is what we're after out of him. You know what? And anything under 4, this is a huge success. Chris Bassitt is a competitor. You see the fire in him when things aren't going well. And I do like that. And I
Yeah,
think,
man, it's a real Freddie versus Jason in that
yeah,
rotation, isn't it?
yes, it is. Some iPads will be broken.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Abdullah, I think I like this prediction. We'll see how the rest of the grounds crew feels. Everybody, feel free to drop your comments on Chris Bassitt, the Hound Dog. Do you think in his final season with the Jays, 36 years old, and again, this is a wily dude, right? This is a Charlie Morton-esque guy. Do you think he still has it in him to continue to get big leaguers out? I do. And I do think we're going to get 170 to 180 innings out of him. If it's better than last year, heck yeah.
I think Barrios is going to have a good year. I think I have no idea what we're going to get out of Max Scherzer.
Hmm.
I think Gossman statistically is going to have a better year than Bassitt. but we're going to be happy with Bassitt and disappointed by Gossman.
Okay. Going to YouTube here.
We're going to get like high three ERA out of kind of
Yeah.
both. And as a
Yeah.
number two out of Gossman, you're like, could have gotten a little bit more, buddy. But
hmm
out of a number four, you go, all right, that's all right.
hmm
That's good.
This pitching staff is going to be very interesting because I think there is a very similar to the Blue Jays. There's a wide range
Yeah.
of results that could come from it. So going to YouTube here, this is from Mike TKO. He goes, "Spring is great for one thing, optimism!" Exclamation, exclamation. Enjoy it while it lasts, LOL. So I'm with you, Mike. Let's enjoy this golden grapefruit run that this team is on. Can they win the spring? It looks like they're close to it. Time will tell, and I'm at this point, I'm ready for the season to start, which is next Thursday, the 27th.
Can I throw some cold water into that optimism?
You wouldn't be Adam Mack if you didn't.
Okay, so all the talk out of spring is Popkins and how this offense is really firing on all cylinders and the golden grapefruit of it all. And look how bombastic our bats are looking, and we're scoring so many runs, right? So if we're to say spring is an indication that the bats are hot and the approach is good, um, Blue Jays 6.16 repeating runs per game in spring training. Orioles 6.2.
Okay.
Better, more runs, more offense than us. Yankees 6.27, even better. Rays 6.25, also better. Red Sox 6.63.
Oof.
So this is my only concern is we were hoping that maybe the AL East would be a bit of a backslide, but if we're going to say, hey, Jays are having a great spring offensively, hate to break it to you,
So is everyone else.
so is everybody else, and the AL East meat grinder continues to grind meat. So there you go. That's my only cold water. I'm still high on this team, still
Yeah.
optimistic, but being fair, AL East, man, it's the AL East.
On the other side of this, I do think it could have a little bit to do with everyone's pitching staffs, right? I know Brian Bello and Lucas Giolito are starting on the IL with the Red Sox. You see Luis Gill and Clark Schmidt and Garrett Cole doing the same for the Yankees. You look at you look at the Orioles. Grayson Rodriguez isn't probably ready before the season. And then you also have Corbin Burns, who has gone to the NL and off to Arizona. Is the Blue Jays pitching staff as good as last year or better? You would hope so. There's a lot of pitching questions, which does help offense. I'm not saying that that is necessarily why these teams, all three of them, seem to be scoring over 6 runs a game, but in the regular season, it could play into it. It's going to be interesting. The AL East, like you said, it's always been a meat grinder and it's going to continue to grind meat.
We do have of the AL East teams the best run differential. So Red Sox, despite that high runs scored, +6.
Right.
Orioles -12, Yankees +13, Rays -1, Blue Jays +18.
All
So,
right. Not
so that's
bad.
and there's some positivity for you. There you go.
There you go.
I'm back on board, baby.
All right. Going to Poppin' Wheelies on YouTube, formerly Taco Time. He goes, I was thinking you guys would have 10K subs by now. Keep at it. Old Taco Time. He's been with us a long time. He bailed on the season last year. Glad to see him back. Yeah, you know what? We did not mention to hit subscribe, and that is always a problem with us here. So if you are on the channel and have not subscribed or hit the like button, that's your cue
The
to
thing
do
is,
so.
is is we found the 5,000 middle-aged to old people who watch Blue Jays and know how to use YouTube.
Yes.
We've got all of them already.
Yes.
None of the kids are interested. So we're like Tony, like skateboarders today don't give a shit about Tony Hawk,
No.
right? Fuck off, old man. That's what
Yeah.
they say. No respect for your elders. So
Yeah.
we're the Tony Hawk of Blue Jays podcast. No, we're
That's
not.
right.
I wish.
All right. Going to another longtime listener here. This is from Mantis Toboggan, Doctor.
Dr. Mantis, yeah.
He
MD.
goes, he goes, Berroa's ceiling. So he's talking about Steward Berroa here. Berroa's ceiling to me is Rajay Davis. I'd love to see that type of player on the Jays again. In reality, I see him as a switch hitting bench outfielder with speed, but hey, I'll take it. I'm torn on the 50 million gap between Vlad and the Jays. 50 million over 14, 3.57 million per year. That's pocket change to Rogers. They took on more than that per year for Miles Straw, truth, to get international cap money. I'm inclined to believe there's something missing here, like 150 million deferred or more. Great episode today, guys. So thank you, Dr. Mantis. And that is a piece of this puzzle we're not aware of. We don't really know the details of the offer, right? How much of it was deferred because you put that 700 million that is deferred from Shohei through the equation of inflation and it comes out to like 480, right? So maybe there is a large chunk of this Vladdy contract that is deferred, and maybe that's the sticking point because it's true the 3.5 million that they're apart does seem like such a minute amount. We'll see where it all plays out. We'll see if Hector Gomez is correct and that the Blue Jays are going to make another offer. We'll see what that offer is, and we'll see if Vladdy has any interest. I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about this, but we've talked about it so much this episode, we'll just leave it at that. Although your wheels are turning, Adam, so go. I don't want to cut you off here if you did have something extra to say.
It's just the Rajay Davis of it all. Is I don't know if he invented the oven mitt, but he was certainly one of the very early adopters of
Yes.
the base paths sliding. I'm just on an MLB.com blog from 2014, and it says he's worn one since 2012, and there is like a big article interviewing him about it. So I would just have to assume he's probably, again, maybe not
Yeah.
the inventor. There's a mention of it here being worn by players like with broken fingers, but he, I think, was the first one to use it just
To
as like,
prevent broken fingers. Yes.
so he, the line here, the quote, yeah, it's good for baking, he said Monday, baking on the bases. Rajay Davis.
Rajay Davis. I loved Rajay when he was a Blue Jay. And I mean, he was a guy you could pencil in every year and be like, oh, yeah, he's stealing 30 to 40, no problem. I remember that 2016 when he was on the Guardians, right? The Indians at the time, and they went to the World Series against the Cubs. That was a heck of a series. I think that went seven before the Cubs finally broke that. What was it, 108 year no
Mm-hmm.
winless World Series streak or whatever. But yeah, he was a big part of that Indians run there, and that was a really good team. And of course, 2016, the Blue Jays lost to them in the ALCS, which was very heartbreaking there as well. And then we watched Edwin go to the Indians the next year, which was like a double whammy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last question here before we wrap things up. This one is from Liam89 commenting on our Alejandro Kirk talk. And he goes, I think Kirky is a top 10 catcher, but not a top five. He's the least of the Jays' problems right now. The lack of depth at position is more of an issue. I would agree with that.
Yep.
I mean, again, Adam and I have talked about this before, right? Kirky's gonna have to catch a lot of games this year if Christian Bettencourt or the Magic Man Tyler Heineman is our backup. But if we can get 110, 100 to 110 starts out of Kirky, heck yeah. And you know what? He has had more hard hit balls with higher exit velos in spring than he did all of 2024. So again, I don't know what David Popkins is doing, and we can constantly lean on that word damage. But if Kirky can be more or less who we watched hitting in 2022, heck yes.
Kirky notably uptick every year in his games behind the plate. So just six behind the plate in that 2020 season, the shortened one. Coming out of that, 40 games behind the plate, 74 behind the plate, 84 behind the plate, and then 89 last year. So 100, probably pretty doable. 110, which, like you said, we'd like to see. We're going to be pushing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 110 out of Kirk and then 50 out of the Magic Man. Okay.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
But you're right. It's not a Kirk problem at the moment. It is a depth problem at the
Yeah.
moment. That's the position in general, right? Not a lot of catchers you feel good about.
Hey, we're 8 days from opening day, buddy. We almost don't need to talk spring training anymore. I am so freaking excited. Let's
Indeed.
go, Blue Jays. Thank you to everyone who followed along. Hit that like button and obviously subscribe if you have not. Adam and I are playing Good Times Comedy Club in Lethbridge Friday and Saturday. Get your tickets. We're also at Sick Brewing in West Edmonton on Sunday night. Come and say hello. Let's talk some Blue Jays. We'll tell you some jokes and have a good time. So tickets for that, I will put the link up in the comment section here. For everyone else who came out and saw us over the weekend in Saskatchewan, thank you so much. Take care, everybody. We will see you on Friday. We'll do our best anyways. Worst case scenario, Adam and I, maybe we put something together Saturday morning while we're waiting for the Saturday night show, and you
Like it.
just need to wait a day. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers.